Shalom, this is Nazama Shah Hamada Bar Yasharal on my channel Nazama the Hebrew Mystic Healer. Before we get started, I'd like to show some love to my 3D kin, the Hebrew Israelites, the 12 tribes of Israel scattered to the four corners of this third dimensional earth plane of existence. Much love and shalom to you. I would also like to show some love to my cosmic kin, the primordial Nibiru dragons, the Anunnaki starseeds scattered to the 12 dimensions of this universal egg matrix. Much love and shalom to you as well. And as always, show some love for the support of my viewers, especially those of you who are subscribed. If you're not yet subscribed, please do so now, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any cool content. Also, if you like this video, please let me know by giving it a like. It does help, guys. Thanks. So in this video, I'm going to cover a rather taboo topic. And the topic I'm going to cover is the topic of witchcraft, specifically baneful magic. Now, this topic is not just taboo within the so-called Hebrew Israelite community, but it's also taboo within a lot of the spiritual communities. The so-called New Age community, the so-called Starseed community, even to an extent, a large extent actually, some of the so-called witch communities or other types of practitioners. Now, I'm not going to go into the scriptures in this particular video. I'm not going to spend my time explaining, why I'm talking about witchcraft, as somebody who is a Hebrew mystic. I'm not going to go into whether or not, practicing witchcraft is something that you could find in the scriptures. I'm not going into anything like that. If you are interested in something along the lines of that topic, then I highly recommend you check out my video, God Seeds, the Corrupt Priesthood, and the Systematic Dismantling of Hebraic Power. And I also recommend you check out my video, Demonized, the Serpent, the Dragon, and the Divine Feminine, for more information about why I am kind of covering this topic and where it all really intersects and connects. So I will talk about the relevance of this, and I will touch on it as to it being taboo and why it's taboo and why it's important for us to address this. So I'm also not going to spend my time really defining various types of witchcraft and closed practices. There's a lot of that on the internet, so I feel like my time would be better spent more so talking about where I'm coming from and why I'm addressing this issue. So within a lot of the communities, witchcraft is really a taboo topic. And honestly, historically speaking, witches are wise ones. There are people who hold primordial wisdom. There are people who hold earth wisdom, celestial wisdom, underworld wisdom, ancestral wisdom. These are people that can access realms and have spiritual gifts for the purpose of healing themselves, their ancestors, and their tribe. That is why they have always existed, and they've existed in every culture throughout the world. And I'm speaking specifically within the context of 3D Earth. I'm not talking about other realms. I'm not talking about other planes of existence in this particular video. I'm just focusing on within the context of Earth. These people are the healers. They're the shamans. They're the witch doctors. They're the medicine men and women. They're the oracles. They're the sibyls. They're the prophets. They're the prophetesses. They're the magi. They're the wizards. They're the practitioners. They're the mystics. They're the seers. They're the dream walkers. They're the mediums. They're the psychics. So this has been really a demonization and vilification of personal power. And if you really pay attention to the history of when witch hunts started during the time of, primarily toward the end of the Roman Empire, entering really the era of the Roman Catholic Church. Not that they didn't happen in other periods of time, but this is when it really started. Now, it also took place with the whole Mohammedans as well. Basically, anytime you had a religion that was oppressive, used to conquer another race or people, used to disconnect them from their heritage, from their customs and culture, whenever this took place, there were witch hunts later. For those people who refused to embrace the customs and the culture of that conquering race, of that conquering people's culture. Now, if you notice, the witch hunts were always focused on people that were not submitting to that particular culture's rule and how they did things. They were targeting specific people and specific races and tribes. It wasn't really just a religious thing. The people that they couldn't beat into submission, they would try to weave into their customs and cultures their own. So let me give you an example. Let's talk about in Ireland, St. Patrick's Day. I'm not going to go in depth in history in this video. I'm just going to make it real fast, okay? But the original Proto-Celtic people were actually Hebraic. They were also known as the serpent people. The serpent, as I talk about in that one video I told you guys to check out, the Demonized video, the serpent is a symbol of wisdom. It also goes back to the Enki line of the Anunnaki, the Nibiru, okay? It was later demonized. But the whole point, I digress, is that they had the serpent of wisdom. They were the serpent people. And what does St. Patrick celebrate? St. Patrick's celebrates the removal and destruction of the snakes from Ireland. Now, there were no snakes in Ireland. So what is it talking about? It's an allegory of St. Patrick, who was a Catholic. I can't remember if he was a bishop or priest, but either way, he was appointed by the church to remove all of the pagans, who were really the Druids. And that's another thing too. Even the name pagan was really something that was supposed to be like pagan and heathen and all of that were really names that were given to, believe it or not, the Hebrew people in diaspora in order to further degrade them and to make it seem like their culture was barbaric. So you see these words even in, the Bible. But it actually was meant to be something derogatory. Even though a lot of people use it now, like the term pagan and neo-pagan. People from all different types of races and cultures who believe in polytheism or witchcraft will now, claim that name. But really, it was originally a derogatory term used against a specific race of people. And not just people in Ireland. People in the Americas as well. In other areas of the world where the Hebrew people in their, tribal state and their unified state were conquered. So a lot of what you see written in the text was added later. A lot of what you see written in the text, and again, I go into this more in my video of the God Seeds when I talk about the corrupted priesthood, but a lot of what you see in there was actually added later. Just like a lot of the Christian doctrines and dogmas and holidays and everything, a lot of that was something that was added over a process of time. And even when you're talking about the transatlantic slave trade, They actually had a special Bible that they gave to slaves that left just the scriptures that basically made them more passive. Scriptures completely focused on, slaves obeying their masters. Scriptures specifically focused on turning the other cheek. And if you notice, even in the Christian and Catholic Church to this day, there is an emphasis put on passivity, on turning the other cheek. A lot of, the words that I'm just going to call him Yeshaya in the New Testament, because the original quote-unquote New Testament texts were more so the Essene texts, not what they have, in the canonized Bible this day. But the point being is they twist his words. They took all those writings and turned it into a Roman Catholic tool of oppression. And they used it not just to oppress and destroy the so-called indigenous people of the Americas, but also as a slave training manual and tool of oppression during the time of the transatlantic slave trade, and also during the time of slavery within the U.S. Now again, I don't want to spend too much time on history, but I'm saying all this to make a point. What's obviated among a lot of the Hebrew Israelite people, and I'm going to go into other groups as well, but I'm going to stop here for a second. What's obviated is that our natural customs were very much in tune to the earth, not just the heavens. Our natural customs did include things like midwifery. They did include oracles and prophecy and divining. They did include root medicine. They did include sorcery. A lot of people don't know this, and it is talked about in some of the other texts that were left out of the Bible. But even Yeshaya, whom a lot of Christians and even, to an extent certain Hebrew Israelites called Jesus, he was a water magi. He practiced water magus practices. So again, I'm not going to go into that too deep. I'll probably touch on the history more so in another video, but I'm making all these points as a background to kind of where I'm really going with this. Witchcraft is something that everybody practices, whether they're aware of it or not. And I'm not just talking about people who celebrate birthdays and other holidays, which are centered around ancient, we'll just say pagan practices, but we'll just say ancient practices, okay, that are not Torah-centered. So, yes, most people know that when you celebrate a birthday, that's witchcraft. You're actually blowing out candles and making a wish and letting the smoke of the candles carry that up for your wish to be fulfilled. So that's a form of witchcraft. But let's go beyond that. Did you know that prayer is a type of incantation? It's a type of witchcraft. Did you know that if let's say you have a friend that's sick and you're making them let's say you're making them some kind of broth to help them get better, or some hot tea, and you're putting that intention as you're making it, I'm going to make this, to help my sick friend, that's witchcraft. That's kitchen witchery, okay? What about if you're setting an intention or a goal mentally, and then you're going out and doing it? That's a form of witchcraft. The word spell or spelling, the word abracadabra, which means I create as I speak, which is a Hebrew word, by the way. When you speak, and you speak, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, and you make a statement, you are casting a spell. Spelling, words, intentions. This is a form of witchcraft. When you're making herbal remedies, a lot of people like to say, oh, it's just, they like to try to separate it. They like to try to demonize certain forms of pharmacia and then act like the natural stuff isn't. Sorry, the original pharmacia was all natural. It was not the chemicals they do now. That's actually more of a different type of chemical alchemy, to be honest. But it's all pharmacia. So if you're somebody that works with herbs, if you're somebody that does herbal remedies, that's witchcraft. That's green witchery, okay? If you're a midwife, that's a form of witchery. If you're somebody who prays over the sick, puts hands on people, whether you're in a church or not, that's witchery. That's witchcraft. I'm just giving little simple things. Let's say you see a star, you wish on a star, that's witchcraft. You blow petals off of a dead dandelion, or you pick petals off a flower making a wish, that's witchcraft. Wishbones. I'm just kind of throwing out just mundane stuff that people don't think about. These are all the ways we practice witchcraft. And these are ways that we as creators set our intentions to create or destroy, because we all have that current within ourselves. We hold the keys to that within. Working with crystals, by the way, witchcraft. Oracle divining, witchcraft. Urim and Thummim, witchcraft. Lots, witchcraft. Prophecy, seeing, oracle, witchcraft. This is all witchcraft. Just because we're changing the word, just because we're doing it within a context of a certain culture, a certain belief system or paradigm, a certain national identity, does not take away from what it is. Renaming it and relabeling it something else because you have a different belief system or you have a different culture than another group of people does not change what it is. Villainizing their belief system and villainizing their culture and villainizing their roots and calling what they do witchcraft and what you do holy does not change the fact that it's the same thing. The only thing that makes it different is that you are aligning to your belief system, you are aligning to your ancestral and cultural roots for those who are sensitive to that and do embrace their own culture and roots. And those other people are aligning to their belief system and or their cultural roots. That's the only distinction. So if they believe in many powers, okay, and you believe in one, that doesn't mean you're not practicing witchcraft. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you. Everybody does, because we're all creators. Because really what witchcraft is, what practicing magic is energy work. And we all do it. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. And I know within like the New Age community, there's a lot of, New Age witches. Okay, people that just do crystals and tarot card readings and astrology and stuff. That's witchcraft, by the way. And I'm not saying that the New Age people are necessarily against that. But that's also witchcraft. It's just not, it's not traditional. Maybe it's not, it's based off of ancient practices because there's nothing new under the sun, so things become recycled. But it's kind of a reemergence or reconstruction of older wisdom. So let's get on the topic of star seeds. Just because you are a star seed and you may have a tendency to disassociate from this earth and not consider it your home, does not mean that you are as well not practicing witchcraft. And by the way, guys, there's different levels of magic. There's high magic and low magic. What do I mean by that? Low magic is working with basically either just yourself and your own intentions by using ritual objects, or just setting intentions, or just pure energy work. Because really, there is such a thing as an energy practitioner where they just use energy work. Reiki, by the way, is a type of witchcraft, but it's dealing with energy craft. So you're allowing energy to flow through you as a channel, and you're directing that energy. So that's a type of energy craft. Anytime you're doing visualization or imagination as, as part of creating something or setting an intention, that's a type of energy craft. That's mental magic, and it's also energy practitioner work. So it's energy and mental. So I digress. So low magic is when really you're working with just yourself and your own intentions. And it also can include elemental magic. So you're just working with basically drawing energy from, the 4 or 5 elements. So that's low magic. Also, it deals with making small external changes in your reality. That's low magic. High magic. High magic can be ceremonial, but more often than not, it's really drawing from what they would call, quote unquote, higher or more powerful energy currents. So someone that practices higher magic might deal in planetary or cosmic magic. Okay, so they may deal with specific beings or epithets, gods or goddesses, angels or demons. They may deal in ritual circles or covens and orders. That's higher magic. Also, high magic and high alchemy is really the same. When you're making changes within yourself, you're literally altering who you are at your core. This can be physical, this can be mental, this can be spiritual, emotional, but that's also a form of high alchemy or high magic. Whereas again, low magic is more so dealing with, smaller things in your external world. So now I'm going to go into the topic of baneful magic. And I'm just going to say that anytime you're setting an intention for something, anytime you are consciously, actually, even when you're not consciously, because whether we are conscious of it or not, we are always creating and destroying the reality fields around us. What do I mean by that? You're casting spells, you're altering your reality all of the time, whether you realize it or whether you don't. So it's better to become conscious of yourself and conscious and mindful, so that you have discipline, so that you have mastered yourself and you can master your environment. So I'm not advocating somebody to just, just because I'm talking about magic or energy, doesn't mean I'm advocating for people to just go out and do whatever. I'm saying, master yourself, stand in the embodiment of I am, and be a creator. But be responsible. If you're going to claim your sovereignty, you also need to understand that you're responsible for what you put out there. You're responsible for the words you speak. You're responsible for your actions, and you're responsible for your magic. So be mindful and be intentional and be willing to accept the consequences of your actions, whether you are doing energy work, whether you're speaking, whether you're doing things in the physical world. It's all the same thing. It's all a continuum of energy. So, having said that, there's really this misnomer within the witch community about baneful magic. Everybody kind of looks at witches nowadays as being Wiccans. As I already pointed out, to various degrees, everybody's practicing witchcraft. The difference between a witch and somebody who's not a witch is that witches are aware they're doing it and they practice and hone in that skill. And that would be somebody who labels themselves as a witch, as a magi, as a magician, as a practitioner. So, baneful magic, and I'm not going to go into the moral qualms of any of this, but there are instances where baneful magic may be necessary. If somebody is trying to harm you or your family, if somebody is trying to destroy your life, and you have exhausted every other means of protecting yourself, then forms of baneful magic are necessary. Or you can choose to do it. It can be necessary. So baneful magic can be anything from binding, which I don't technically consider it baneful most of the time, but it can be. You know, if binding something to somebody makes them self-destructive or, you know, prevents them from doing certain things, it is an infringement of will. I don't recommend going around binding people, but if somebody is trying to harm you or your family, then sometimes binding is the best option because you're not causing harm to them. You're not, you know, sending a curse their way, but you're saying, look, I'm going to bind you from doing anything from harming me or the people I care about. There's reversals. If you know somebody has, you know, cursed you, if you know somebody has given you the evil eye, if you know somebody is gossiping about you, slandering you, trying to harm you in any kind of way, you can reverse that energy back to them. Or you can create a curse or a hex, and you can actually, you know, send energy toward that particular person. Now, again, I'm not turning this into whether you should or whether you shouldn't do a curse. I'm just saying these would be instances where you could do it. Instances where if it's your last resort, yeah. So, are we supposed to turn the other cheek? This is slave doctrine, people. I'm not saying go around hurting people. I'm not saying taking that lightly. It's always better to treat people as we want to be treated, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean allow other people to bulldoze us. It doesn't mean allow other people to infringe upon our sovereignty. It doesn't mean allow other people to harm us or our family, for example. So there comes a point where we are to be responsible for ourselves and our safety. There is a point where it's necessary to take back our power that's been stolen from us. I'm going to do a part 2 on this video, guys. I'm going to wrap up this video and do a part 2. I'm going to go a little deeper into this. So stay tuned. Take care and shalom.